Hello, my name is Kendra Park. I am currently a sophomore here at Bloom. I am a mass comm major with a concentration in journalism, and I am minoring in political science. So, because of my major and minor, for this presentation, I decided to bring the two together and discuss the global status of American media. So, before I begin, I'm going to go over what will be in this presentation. First, I'm going to start with a background on what exactly media is. Then I will do a history of media and why we need the media. Then I will discuss American media issues that we have today, the American media in general, foreign media. I'll go over some examples of foreign news content. Then I will describe foreign news sources, American news sources, and I have my work cited at the end. So, what is media? I found three definitions. Some are very similar, but each one has a little bit of a different component to it. So, the first definition is the main means of mass communication, broadcasting, publishing, and the internet, regarded collectively. Second is the means of communication as radio and television, newspapers, magazines, and the internet that reach or influence people widely. And then lastly, communication channels through which news, entertainment, education, data, or promotional messages are disseminated. Media includes every broadcasting and narrowcasting medium, such as newspapers, magazines, TV, radio, billboards, direct mail, telephone, fax, and the internet. So, a brief history of media. The beginning of media would be in 1440 when the first printing press was invented by Johannes Gutenberg. And Gutenberg would be most known for the Gutenberg Bible, which is the most well-known sold Bible out there. Then in 1605, Relation, and a bunch of German words I can't pronounce, was the first newspaper. So the first newspaper was located in Germany. Then in 1690, Public Occurrences is published, which was the first American newspaper. Next, in 1906, first wireless radio broadcast by Reginald A. Fessenden, which was done in the US. Then in 1940, we had the first ever news broadcast by Lowell Thomas, which was in New York. And then lastly, in 1990, the World Wide Web was created by computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee. So, why do we need the media? Well, first, we'll start with the political reason. So, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This is the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and fun fact, I have that memorized because of one of my high school journalism teachers. So, off of that, why was the freedom of press included in this? Well, one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, thought it was very important, and we know that because of this quote right here. The basis of our governments being the opinion of the people, the very first object should be to keep that right. And were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers, or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. But I should mean that every man should receive those papers and be capable of reading them. Off of that, the media is looked at as a watchdog for the government, or sometimes even seen as the fourth branch of government. So, currently, American media has been looked at because of some issues that it has, such as sliding profits, scandals about manipulation, plagiarism, propaganda, lower audiences, dumbing down, fake news, market censorship, political biases, as well as media omissions, distortion, inaccuracy, and bias in the US is something that has been acknowledged by many outside of America, but it is slowly being realized more by those inside the US. And many foreign observers feel that the political right has taken over America's news media and that the evident political bias of Fox News and Clear Channel Radio has become a serious problem to the rational workings of democracy. So, more on American media. In the media industry, it is well known that when American newspapers carry a foreign news article on their covers, sales fall from 20 to 25%. Harris and Yankelovich polls show that over half of American newspaper readers are interested in international news. But another Harris poll indicated that news executives believe that only 5% care. Then a survey of Asian and European university students studying in America showed that they felt that American news coverage of their countries is inadequate, biased, and inaccurate. Then the Columbia Journalism Review reached the conclusion that there is a crisis in international news reporting in the US in spite of an overall rise in interest after 9/11 and the Iraq War. So, on to foreign media. First, we'll take a look at Italy's media, which Italy's media is known to be sophisticated in its writing style, challenging in the level of political and cultural knowledge it believes the audience knows. The newspaper has never been a mass medium in Italy or anywhere else in Southern Europe. It has always been geared towards an elite audience involved in political society. So, in Italy specifically, their newspapers are not written for the masses. They are written for those who are educated, who are wealthy, those who are interested and involved in politics. And because of this, in their stories, they do not dumb down information because they assume that their audience already has background on the information, which is also why the writing style is sophisticated and challenging because they already think that their audience is to that level. So moving on to Canada and Japan, it was found that 50% of foreign news in Canada and Japan is actually focused on the US than in Latin America. Latin American newspapers carry 20 times the number of stories about the US than American papers carry about Latin America. So with these two areas, the news coverage is very unbalanced. Then a study done by the Media Group at Glasgow University focused on British news content and public understanding of the developing world. Greg Philo, developer of the study, explained that in Britain, similar to the United States, there is a common belief in broadcasting that audiences are not interested in foreign news programming, especially about the developing world, because these stories don't have a local connection. And that's something that in journalism classes, they actually do discuss a lot, that, whatever story that you're working on, try and make it a local focus because readers are able to relate to it more if there's a local aspect to it. Then lastly, there's a lot of attention in Europe because the US is the most powerful country in the world, acknowledges Chris Van Hume, a correspondent for Belgium and Netherlands newspapers. So Chris is saying that, in Europe, a lot of their news does cover the US just because of how powerful of a country that it is. So, some examples of foreign news content. One example is how other countries covered the issues in Ferguson. Coverage varied widely between countries and outlets. Some paid particular attention to the militarization of the police, Many tried to explain to readers why the legacy of the civil rights movement and the election of President Obama has not brought about a post-racial society. And then there were those who were mostly concerned with what American problems say about their country's own. This is from Columbia Journalism Review. Then the BBC was found to be telling untruths that were politically damaging to the British government. The BBC has often been accused of having a liberal bias, and many interpreted its reporting of the Iraq conflict as being anti-war. Also, another example is Dave Marsh, a former reporter for ABC's Nightline, took a job for Al Jazeera English. He resigned a couple years later, naming what he considered to be the channel's bias, and especially its anti-American bias. Remarking on the organization's general style of reporting, Marsh said, "I think that Al Jazeera English is a very competent, very professional news organization that does a particularly great job south of the equator, but tends to report almost everything from the point of view of either the Arabic-speaking world or, at the very least, what you might call the post-colonial world. And since I'm not authentically those things, I do not belong there." So, here is a list of some of the foreign news sources that I found, and with them I have their slogan or their motto, so what they want to attempt with their news coverage. So, an Arabic source is Al Jazeera English. Their motto is "the opinion and the other opinion." A British source is the BBC News, "Live the story." Another British one is Open Democracy. They give those fighting for their rights the agency to make their case and to inspire. An Asian source, Asia Times, covering geopolitical news and current affairs across Asia. Canadian source is Global Research. In an era of media disinformation, our focus has essentially been to center on the unspoken truth. Russian foreign news source is RT, and their slogan is "Question More." And an international source is Fair Observer, which aims to inform and educate global citizens of today and tomorrow. Then I also, just for comparison, compiled a list of well-known popular sources for America, and I decided to compare these based on their slogans. So if you look at the foreign ones, they are very focused on being fair and balanced and seeing the other side of the story. They want to give as much information as possible, which is what you should do in media. But if you look at these American ones I'm about to list off, there's only a few that talk about being fair and balanced or focusing on America. Others focus on themselves, which is not what a news source should be doing. So, Fox News, their slogan, "Fair and Balanced." CNN, the most trusted name in news. New York Times, all the news that's fit to print. Wall Street Journal, the daily diary of the American dream. NBC, here on NBC. CBS, America's most watched network. And ABC, start here. So here is a list of all the sources I used throughout this presentation. From this presentation, I hope that you learned, what exactly the media is and what it looks like worldwide. And maybe from this, you can question, the sources that you're using and be able to find the best information that you can on topics all around the world. The end.